joining us in this conversation about our own beauty and our own beauty standards. Andrea Lewis, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited. Thank you for the love.
We've had this vibrant conversation this morning about standards, right?
Oh,
Standards
wow.
of beauty that we try to fit into. We had this decision that came down yesterday out of Texas where young Daryl George was told the Crown Act would not protect his right to wear his hair in locks. And it's sort of been a robust conversation about what it means to have our own standard. And this docu-series, which was really powerfully done, appreciated it. I recognized the content, the labels, the names that they were talking about. I remember seeing Fashion Fair growing up. I remember all of these things. And it was just a real important reminder that when we do decide to do something for ourselves, there's really no stopping us. Talk with us about the vision behind this docu-series and why you thought this was a story that needed to be told during this time.
Yeah, well, honestly, it's inspired by my lived experience. I grew up as a television actress and being oftentimes tokenized in my spaces as a Black actor, as a young Black actor. And so I had a lot of experiences to kind of see people's interpretations of my beauty with going into hair and makeup rooms. And sometimes I'm having the products or not having the products or thinking they know about our hair and having literally like one thing and being like, trust me, I know this works. And not knowing about the diversity of us, while at the same time growing up around many women that look like me in my family and seeing them celebrate their beauty and their uniqueness and their complexions and their hair, and also just being like a consumer. I always tell people, I'm like, I love magazines. Like I love pop culture. I was definitely that girl that was like flipping through a magazine and seeing the one Black model and like staring at her and being like, oh, I need to
Yep.
find a way to look like this. So representation about Black beauty has always been important to me, has always been something that I kind of resonated with. And I kind of got to a stage, I would say maybe around 2012, 2013, those times where I remember like the natural hair movement kind of starting, where women were like doing these big chops and they were getting rid of their relaxers and they were just trying to like figure out what they kind of wanted to look like in a way that we hadn't seen in a while.
Yeah.
And I just felt like I was seeing so much change, so much inspiration, and so much like newness that was just for like, as a Black woman, I want to look like myself, and I'm not sure what that is. So I'm going to kind of start over, whether that mean corporate or beauty or fashion or just in television. Even television started to change, started to see more Black actresses with like natural hair on TV.
Right.
And I just felt like I never saw anything that kind of celebrated this, that celebrated our beauty, celebrated the game changers, the people that were making strides, even though we were being boxed out of spaces and we had a lack of, and we were not being included in these conversations. There was still so many people doing so much work behind the scenes and trying their best. And I never saw stories that told it from that perspective. And so it was like this baby that was just living in my brain forever and ever and ever. And then we finally kind of, started to develop it and get it kind of into the shape that it is now. And then it got out into the world. And I'm really blessed. But I always tell people, I'm like, I am a beauty connoisseur. Like I love beauty. So it's been a story that's lived with me forever.
I love that, the idea of being a beauty connoisseur, particularly for those of us who were excluded from what it meant to be beautiful, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things in the first episode that really stuck out for me was that the inability to find tools that would work, right? We
Mhm.
recognize that this is what we look like. It's not that we were trying to look like other people, but the
Mhm.
tools that we were forced to use, the makeup, the cleansers, the systems that existed were not designed for us. They didn't
Yeah.
work for us. There's one part where one of the commentators talks about sort of looking ashy and
Yes.
having this beautiful, richly melanated skin, but all the products had this frost component to it. So you always
Yeah.
look sort of ashy and gray. And the idea, there's one woman who says, she would never tell her mother, "Mom, you're not beautiful." But her mom could not look beautiful using makeup and
Makeup.
products that were not designed for her.
Yeah.
And I think that is that idea that I want this thing, but the available items that can help me secure it were not designed with my needs in mind. That
Absolutely.
feels like it's sort of at the heart of all of the innovation in
Absolutely.
embracing the beauty standards. Talk with us a little bit about sort of the self-determination component of being in this industry and recognizing, yeah, no, they're not here for you, but you're going to be here for this. And that means we got to do something a little different.
Yeah, you know what? I think that's just in the DNA of Black women, period. to be honest with you.
Yes.
No matter the field that we are in, I think that we are not deterred by the things that we see that are not made for us. Like we instead are like, okay, I'm gonna have to figure it out. I'm gonna have to do something a little bit different. I just think about that in my own life, the amount of times that I've been in spaces and no one there looked like me, or no one wanted to tell a story about celebrating Black beauty, but I still felt like in my soul that it needed to happen. Like I could kind of care less about the naysayers. And when we were speaking with all of these game changers, it was the same. Like it didn't matter that there was no brown pencils, or they were like, I'm gonna make one. There was no foundation. That's okay. I'm gonna kind of be innovative and use a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and I'm gonna figure it out. And that's just our experience. I think what was fascinating in hearing a lot of these stories is so many Black women spoke about like their mothers not wearing a lot of makeup, their mothers just kind of being like, oh, a red lip and maybe like, just like their hair slicked back or just like hoops. And you're like, that's because we did not have these options. So in reality, your mother wanted to look like herself. And she really was like, well, I don't see any foundations. I don't see anything that's going to enhance my skin. So let me just put on the simplest thing. Let me just put on this lipstick. I know what to do with that. And it's just like hearing so many women, no matter where they were from, what part of the world they grew up in, that this was such a common thing. And I think that's our experience in the world is if we don't see the thing that looks like it for us, we're either going to make it, or we're going to be like, it's okay, I'm going to find another way to express my beauty. And so a lot of Black women, it's like, yeah, their naturalness has been their beauty, like it's like, oh, I'm just going to let my skin
Wow.
shine. Vaseline is what I'm going to use. And that's where I'm going to get my glow. I remember like seeing my aunt, like for blush, she would use her lipstick like on,
Yep.
and her lipstick was everything. Her lipstick was on the
Yes.
cheek, it was on the eyes, it was on every single part of her face. And I remember seeing that and thinking, wow, okay, I didn't know lipstick could be, I didn't know that's what it was for. But now as an adult, I'm like, oh, that's probably because she wasn't seeing a blush that was as warm as her complexion, that
Right.
that she knew was going to make her feel as fresh and make her feel like shiny. But you're like, well, I know I can kind of, if I just dab out this red a little bit, if I just kind of mix it, I'm going to get that thing. And so yeah, I think that Black women, we are natural innovators. It's like it's just ancestral for us. And I think that was a big part
Mm.
of the storytelling for me, in the sense of that's how I see us, that I'm like, it does not matter what part of history we talk about, you are always going to find a story about a Black woman creating something to
Yeah.
service her community. And all of these people, the men and the women, that's what they were doing. And so I just think, I'm like, yeah, I'm like, tap into your DNA. That's what we got. That's our thing. Like,
Tap into your DNA. I feel like that is a lesson for, I'm writing it down. That's a lesson for so many barrier breakings, right?
yeah,
Like, and again, as we're having this conversation about fitting into standards that were by design, not thinking about us, like they were not imagining us. They did not consider our needs. They didn't even
yes,
consider us worthy of being factored into the overall discussion. And so when
absolutely.
you see Black women responding by saying, no, I'm going to create my own space in this
Mhm.
way, they're not only battling this desire to have a standard of beauty that works for them, they're battling the inability to have the tools that are available to them. And at some point, also battling this sort of socialization that says if you are going to create tools, then you should make tools that are still going to allow you to approximate this standard of beauty that you were
Yes,
never genetically designed to reach. And there's one
yes,
component in the second in the second segment of the series that talks about soap,
yes.
talked about cleaning and this idea that being clean meant you had to have ingredients that were also going to lighten
Lighten,
the
yeah.
skin. Give us a sense as to the history behind that, because I think that I knew that skin lightening, skin bleaching was a real thing, but the idea that it was baked into the soap, that was something I had not spent as much time dwelling on. Talk to
Yeah, I mean, those kinds of things, they're scary to know, like in terms of just like, like the research and even understanding it, and that they still affect our cultures to this day. Like, this is not something that's like we can look at it and it's like, oh, it's old timey or like back in the day. Like, there are actually still like in the Caribbean and in like the Latin countries and Africa, that you are still seeing skin lightening products being used heavily, being like pushed onto people, being that's that concept that we show like this kind of old ad of
yeah.
showing somebody going from light to dark with cleaning, which is in itself kind of the I'll say the marketing that they kind of pushed onto us Black people, onto white people, onto everybody, that like we are dirty, that's our thing. And so that's why you see just like historically Black people we have a very specific standard when it comes to just leaving our home. We're very like, you
That's right.
have to look a certain way. And that's just because that's been our survival. That's been just a part of our experience in the world. And so, yes, seeing these products that they were baked into our soaps, into our lotions, into all of these things. I always tell people, I'm like, I still think you should look at ingredients now because there's so many products that are still doing that. Or even like, I'm always like very triggered by language of something that says like brightening. I'm like, why? Why does it say
Me
that? Like,
too. I'm like,
why?
what are we brightening? What
Yeah,
is
like
that?
what do
What does
they
that
mean
mean?
brightening? Like, so what are you talking about? Like, what do you actually mean? Do you mean like that my skin will just look like clearer, or are you talking about like literally lightening my skin and not and me not understanding because that language has been treated like as if it's a positive and not what it actually has been instilled into us, which is that lighter is better and that we should be kind of leaning towards these types of things. But it is like you said, it's like Black people have a lot of unlearning to do when it comes to the standards that we've been taught are acceptable, and it's been survival. So
Hmm.
you know, the hair relaxers or hair straighteners, there was a time when that was because it really would help your family, it would help us to be in a certain position in our lives, and we're just trying to survive. Then you get to a space where, okay, now no, we don't have to think like that. You have the Black is Beautiful movement, you have like us being more Afrocentric and just more, you know, in support of our natural hair and our skin and our complexions. But again, there's a lot of unlearning. And I think that when you talk about beauty now, you're still having these conversations. I have friends, whether they grew up in the
Right.
South or, you know, certain households that they're like, yeah, no, certain hairstyles are still not acceptable for me. And I recognize that this is just my own thing. And we're all trying. We have more tools in terms of our language, but there's a ton of unlearning. And I think Black people, unfortunately, have been really at the brunt of that because think about what that would do to generations of an ad
Right.
being produced,
Right.
a soap being produced to be used on your body to clean yourself. We have to be clean. We like to be clean, but it's the concept is that you also want to be lighter. Like that's better. And that's a real thing. I made a short film a few years ago called Token, and that was our opening scene. It was about a Black girl, but not only a Black girl, a dark-skinned girl that was in her tween ages. And our opening scene was her in her bath, just really scrubbing her skin, just really trying her best to make it as light as possible, just with soap,
Mm.
but just the concept that we all still kind of are unlearning these things because they affect us in every part of our life. And it is something that's kind of passed down. And so I think showing that within the doc that like just how ingrained it is and how innocent of a product it is, that it's not just you going to a store and being like, here's some skin bleach. Sometimes it was as
Right.
simple as your soap. Your day-to-day soap would have something to lighten you. So it's scary.
Hmm. I'm so glad you referenced that because one of the other things that stuck out for me was the different experiences that some of the voices featured in the docuseries had based on their skin complexion. You
Mm-hmm.
had some beautifully, richly melanated sisters on there talking about the fact there was one in particular who I remember, and it struck me. I had to rewind it like 3 or 4 times. And she talked about the fact that because they did not sell foundation that was dark enough for her, she ended up using the darkest version of foundation that she could find, but it was lighter than her skin. The
Yes.
first time she saw herself in a foundation that was actually her complexion, she was upset because she was used to seeing this lighter version of herself.
Yes.
I was floored. I was like, "Oh
Yeah.
my God, that makes so much sense."
Yeah.
This idea, and I often say this because I went natural in the late '90s, and I would
Mm-hmm.
always say, yes, I had a difficult time going natural, but I have light skin privilege. I mean, it
Yeah.
was hard, but it wasn't that hard in
Yeah.
relative
Yeah.
to what my darker skinned sisters were facing. And
Yeah.
when it comes to the innovation in the beauty industry, because as
Mm-hmm.
you said, this is in our DNA. We have what it takes to build our own standards. We are clear about that. But when it
Yeah.
comes to innovation, it seems as though, and please correct me if I'm wrong in my interpretation of this, but it seems as though some of the greatest sources of innovation have come from sisters who have been the most excluded, which tends to be our darker, more richly melanated women in our community. And I'm wondering if there is a particular role for more richly melanated voices to really own this space in ways that sort of shirks the traditional paradigm where light-skinned people have more access, take up more room. And
Yeah.
y'all don't call me up on this show talking about you talking bad about light-skinned people. That's what we're talking about. We're having an honest conversation here. I don't
Yeah,
think light-skinned Black women with type 2 hair should be the ones leading the natural hair movement. This is one of my big
absolutely.
issues in the natural hair space. Talk with us about how particular aspects of Blackness perhaps should take up more room in these conversations as
Oh,
those who often get the mic but maybe aren't able to be as full in their analysis.
yeah, no, I'm in complete agreement with you, you know, and I think that's been one of the fascinating parts and beautiful parts for me in terms of the conversation we've been able to have whenever we do events or screenings or anything for the series is in like, you know, like let's talk about it in house. Like let's actually really discuss this of what this means. We are not a monolith, and so our experiences are not that. Even within our community, it is not that. There is a real thing. I always tell people, I'm like, I have been medium the whole entire time. I am a medium girl. I'm medium complexion. I've got a hair type that's acceptable for both Black people and white people. I completely know this, but I'm just a fan of Black beauty. I love Black women. So I can be open to hearing everybody's experiences and being a shepherd and telling the story. But I always think you have to be able to listen to a darker skinned woman and her experiences because she really is experiencing the brunt of these kinds of conversations in a way that's completely different from anybody that's lighter skinned than her. And it's important because yes, that's why we've seen these complexions really range now. Is because you have influencers calling them out, like really calling them out, being like, hey, I'm dark and this foundation, your darkest shade is not doing it. It is not actually matching my complexion. It's not even dark, to be honest with
Right.
you. And so
Right. It's a
you have
muted brown.
yes, it's mocha. It's like a light
Yeah.
caramel. It's like it's just not good enough. And so I really do like commend them on that work because it is something where just to think about that story came from Shalom Black and hearing it, it shocked me as well. Like what that could even be, like just kind of guessing your complexion, going for the
Yeah.
darkest one because you know you're dark, but you're not sure where you actually fit in the spectrum. You probably never thought about your undertones and are you warm? Are you cool? Are you neutral? You never thought about these things. So you're just kind of like, okay, cool. I'm going to put this on and see. And it seems right, I
Mm.
suppose. You get so used to it that in seeing your own complexion, now you're completely shocked. You're just like, I can't even believe that. Like that story shocked me as well because it really like it opens up so much. It's like the difficulties that we find in not only finding our makeup but also just embracing our complexions because we've so been taught, so many of us, that like lighter is better and lighter to any extent. That could
That's
mean
right.
just being a little bit lighter. You know, people talk constantly about their winter complexion versus their summer complexion. You know, like, and that in itself is also a conversation around just like being lighter, like as much as people
Yeah.
try their best not to say that it is, right? And so I think that when it comes to these kinds of things, it's like, yes, my experience has been that like my darker my darker skinned friends have a different experience and can talk to me about something that you're not necessarily thinking about. You just want to see that they have stuff for Black girls. But now
Right.
imagine being a Black girl where you're like, no, I'm looking for, I need something that's for my hair, not for this hair and not for that, or for my skin. And you know, one of the brands that I love is Ami Collet. We feature them in the doc. And
Yes.
the founder, Giada, she is one, she's Senegalese background. She grew up in New York. She's a beautiful dark skinned woman. And she said something that just really like, I was like, oh my gosh, I love hearing this. And she's like, this is a product that is for a visibly Black person. I am not aiming for anybody that's on the ambiguity. I'm looking to make this, you know, and that language is something you don't always hear when it comes to marketing, when it comes to even
Yes.
creating a product. Yes, we want Black women or we want women of color, but to say you're looking for somebody that the world is not confusing them. This is a Black person, it's a Black woman and a Black experience. And so her products are so skin focused and she highlights like very rich complexions. And yeah, I believe because she is a dark skinned woman, that her having this really fascinating and beautiful product that's her experience that was able to make it. And
Yeah.
not to say that a lighter skinned woman couldn't make something great. We see Rihanna, a light skinned woman who has been able to create a 40 shade range, who really
Right.
cracked open that conversation. But I think it's about making room and also not feeling left out because you're hearing about somebody else's experience, and also recognizing we are not a monolith. It is
Right.
this, and we are always trying to get like the other people, as in white people or at people from other ethnicities, to understand that about us. But I'm like, inside, like in-house, I think we also need to have that conversation and recognize that your darker skinned friends, even if you believe them to be beautiful, even if you look at them and you're like, oh my God, you're so pretty. I think you're so pretty. If they tell you that, no, I was not treated this way. My skin was treated a certain way. I was made fun of. Please don't be like, oh yeah, but me. No, you have to listen. You have to be like, yeah, that's probably true. And that's probably your experience. And I'm so sorry that happened. But here we are now today with a new conversation, a conversation that should be healing, a conversation that should be very open. And I've been lucky that like a lot of the panels that we've been on, we've been able to have this convo. While also in the doc, it was so important for me to see a range of complexions, a range of ethnic experiences. And, it's like you want to see an African American, you want to see an somebody who is, Senegalese or Kenyan, you want to see somebody who's Caribbean, you want to see somebody who's Afro-Latino, you want to see them all being able to speak to their experience, because that's Black beauty. That's the true meaning of Black beauty.
What I love about this is that we did not know that the judge in Texas was going to come back with the decision the day
I
before you
know.
came on the show. We've
I
had this
know.
conversation with you booked, and I think the ancestors are just so amazing in how they do things and how it all works out. Because we did not plan this, but it was very striking to me that as we're having this conversation this morning about these beauty standards as applied to hair, and it was striking to me that here we have within the beauty industry a real demonstration of what it was for Black women to say, "Hey, I'm here. See me, value me," and realize, oh, you don't see me or value me or at all. And then
Yeah.
say, well, I'm going to have to do it on my own. And we saw
Yeah.
the example of the folks behind the Lip Bar, which I got to confess, between Lip Bar and Mented, those are two of my favorite brands right now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But you see a real example of this. Here they are, the founders of the Lip Bar. They go on the Shark Tank, which is a show that a lot of us love to watch. And literally, Mr. Wonderful, who is Mr. Terrible, calls them colorful cockroaches. Like
Crazy.
on a nationally syndicated show. And
Yes.
denies them the investment. And then they are rejected. I mean, that every time I see the clip of how he just dragged them, sister, it upsets my spirit, it upsets
Yeah.
my soul. But he did it completely unaware of what the impact was and did not care. They
Yes.
had to stake out for themselves. We are beautiful on our own standards. What
Yes.
you see as colorful cockroaches, we see as the grandmothers of the universe. We see
Yes.
as the people who were able to define what humanity was. We birthed you, we birthed humanity, we birthed society, and they had to literally do it on their own. But thank God they did, because
Yes.
look at how they have been able to transform the industry. And I think that is really a metaphor. We're talking about this in the context of beauty, folks. And this conversation could be applied to a lot of ways. But for me, in light of the conversation we've had for the past hour and a half now, prior to you coming on, Andrea, I feel like what we're seeing in terms of this documentary, The Black Beauty Effect, it really is an example of us grappling with trying to be included, realizing that wasn't going to happen, and saying, well, I'm not gonna not be beautiful. What you think this is? I'm just gonna stay in the shadows?
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yes, that's the thing. I think that that's what people ask me all the time. What do you hope people gain from the doc? And I'm honestly like, I hope you gain becoming a game changer in whatever industry you're in. Like just making a way no matter the industry. Yes, we're talking about beauty. I love beauty, but this is more than beauty. This is everything. This could be science, this could be tech, this could be content creation, whatever it is that you are not feeling like they are supporting your community, they are making a way for your community, please, please just find a way, connect with whomever it is that you need to connect to, be innovative, don't be afraid. And so you see those stories, and that's why it's like the Lip Bar one, it really resonates with people. One, because I've known the Lip Bar, Melissa and Roscoe, I've known them forever. And so I remember when that happened in real time and how crazy it was. But what's fascinating is when we show that clip, so many people haven't seen it, don't know. And it rallies them up every single time in the same way, like as if it just happened. But as Melissa kind of stated, the lip bar was not being made for the approval of a white man with a bald head. It was being made for her community. It was being made for women like her. It was being made for us to feel accepted, to feel beautiful, to find our own standards. And so I think that the bigger message is always like, we get to define our standard. I always tell people, just even as an actor, I'm always like, you tell them what you are. Don't let this business tell you what you are. You tell them what you are. You show them constantly what you are. And I think Black Beauty Effect, the overarching message the entire time is we're telling them what we are. We set our own standard. We get to define what our complexions are and what we need for our complexions, what we need for our hair, what we need for our skin. We get to tell them. We can't let them tell us, because they've been telling us this entire time and they ain't been getting it right. And they have not been making us feel comfortable. They have not been making room for us. They've been giving us little crumbs here and there just to fill a quota. But yes, we are in a beauty innovation explosion right now. And it's because we are telling people what we are. And I think that that's the message for Black people to me, period. Even when they try to stop us, even with this new ruling, like, that is so disappointing, but there's so many people that are going to rally behind them. There's so many more conversations that are going to happen. And we're going to see change, because that's what we're used to. And like, I always tell people, like, this is in our DNA. This is our ancestry. This is what we are used to. So as much as the fight could feel exhausting, it's built within us. I don't think we know any other way. I honestly don't. I think we are so good at making a way that we're always going to do that. You know what I mean? And I just think, yeah, I think we'll find it constantly, and we'll be tired, but we're going to find a way.
And that was a perfectly timed comment. I just saw someone in one of the show chats said, my DNA is tired and fried, but we might be tired and fried, but we are able to innovate anyway. And I love that this is the note we get to end this show on, because quite frankly, it's hard having a conversation about rejection and not being valued and seen by the dominant tastemakers until you remind yourselves, wait a minute, we are dominant tastemakers. We are only rejected when we are submitting ourselves to those who have never been able to see us for who we truly are. But we don't have that same baggage in the same way. And as we are healing and doing the work of valuing ourselves, we will just find more and more opportunities to innovate in ways that allow us to create solutions to problems we didn't even know that that truly existed. I'm so grateful for this documentary. It is The Black Beauty Effect. It's available on Netflix. She is Andrea Lewis. I have to tell you really quickly, some of our producers absolutely love you. They fell in love with you when you were in Degrassi. Hazel, they're huge fans. So this is a good time for them as well. But I just want to thank you for allowing that baby that was sort of living in your head to be birthed out on the screen. I don't know how it was that we had this scheduled conversation at the same time that we were going to be talking about what it meant to happening out of synchronicity. That's exactly. What's the best way for people to follow you and connect with your work and just support you as you're continuing to?
Oh, thank you. I always tell people, I'm very accessible on Instagram. Honestly, I'm like, reach out, send me a message, send me a DM. I'm very accessible in that space, which is at Andrea Lewis, or follow at Black Beauty Effect on Instagram, so that you can kind of see what we're up to, because we're doing a lot of travel, and it's just a great place to have conversation. But I always tell people, I'm like, reach out to me on social media. I'm not scary. So yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much for giving us some time today. Thank you for this work. Really appreciate you helping us to round out this conversation really powerfully. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye, guys. Bye.